The tension in the House Judiciary Committee room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Congressman Jim Jordan, his face red with rage, leaned into his microphone like a man possessed. His voice echoed through the marble halls of Congress as he screamed at the newest member sitting across from him. "You don't know what you're talking about. You're completely out of line." Jordan's fist slammed on the wooden table, papers flying everywhere. The cameras captured every second as his voice cracked with fury. But Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch. She sat there, perfectly calm, her hands folded neatly on the table. As Jordan's screaming reached its peak, she leaned forward slightly and said something that would change everything. What happened next shocked everyone in that room and sent the internet into absolute chaos. Her response was so perfect, so devastating, that within hours it became the most viral political moment of the year. Before we dive into this incredible story, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss these explosive political moments. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. This wasn't just another heated congressional hearing. This was the moment when a freshman congresswoman from Texas showed Washington exactly who she was and left one of the most feared Republicans in Congress completely speechless. Jim Jordan walked into that hearing room like he owned the place. The 60-year-old Ohio Republican had built his entire career on being the toughest, loudest voice in Congress. For over 15 years he'd been the guy who made witnesses sweat, Democrats squirm, and turned every hearing into his personal battlefield. Jordan wasn't just any congressman, he was the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, one of the most powerful positions in Washington. His reputation was legendary and terrifying. Seasoned politicians would literally prepare for weeks before facing his questioning. He'd destroyed careers with his aggressive style, turning committee hearings into must-watch television. The former wrestling coach had perfected his attack style over decades. No jacket, sleeves rolled up, voice raised to near shouting levels. He'd point his finger, interrupt constantly, and never let anyone finish their answer. It was political theater at its most intense, and Jordan was the undisputed master. Jasmine Crockett was everything Jordan wasn't expecting. At just 43 years old, the Texas Democrat was still a freshman in Congress, having been sworn in less than 2 years ago. She came from Dallas, where she'd built a reputation as a civil rights attorney who never backed down from a fight. But Washington is different from Texas courtrooms. The political establishment had already tried to put her in her place multiple times. Senior Democrats told her to wait her turn and learn the ropes. Republicans saw her as an easy target, young, black, female, and new to the game. What they didn't know was that Crockett had been preparing for moments like this her entire life. Growing up in St. Louis, she'd learned early that she'd have to fight twice as hard to get half the respect. Law school at the University of Houston had sharpened her mind into a weapon. Years in Texas courtrooms had taught her that staying cool under pressure was the difference between winning and losing. This wasn't just another boring committee hearing about budget allocations or highway funding. The House Judiciary Committee was investigating what Jordan called the weaponization of the federal government. It was a direct attack on the Biden administration, and Jordan was using his chairman powers to turn it into a political circus. For months, Jordan had been scheduling hearing after hearing, bringing in witnesses who would bash the current administration. He was building toward the 2024 election, creating sound bites and viral moments that would help Republicans take back the White House. But today was different. Today, the Democrats had decided to fight back, and they'd chosen Jasmine Crockett to throw the first punch. The committee room was packed. C-SPAN cameras were rolling live. Political reporters filled the press gallery, their phones ready to tweet out the most explosive moments. Everyone could feel something big was about to happen. Jordan had no idea he was walking into a trap. He thought this would be just another day of making Democrats look foolish. What he got instead was about to become the biggest political mistake of his career. Jordan's team had leaked their talking points to friendly media outlets. They were planning a full-scale attack, trying to catch her off guard with aggressive questioning about her previous statements on police reform. Instead of panicking, Crockett smiled. She'd been hoping Jordan would try exactly this approach. Her legal background had taught her that the best defense is often a perfect offense. While Jordan was preparing his usual shouting match, she was preparing something completely different. Her chief of staff had asked if she wanted backup from senior Democratic members. Crockett declined. "I've got this," she said quietly. Jim Jordan has no idea what's coming. The stage was set, the cameras were rolling, and neither side was backing down. Chairman Jordan called the hearing to order at exactly 10 a.m. Republican staffers looked confident. They'd seen their boss destroy bigger names than Jasmine Crockett. The first hour went exactly as expected. Jordan grilled witness after witness with his trademark intensity. His voice echoed off the marble walls as he interrupted answers, demanded yes or no responses, and made dramatic speeches disguised as questions. This administration has turned our justice system into a political weapon, Jordan declared, his finger jabbing at the air. They're going after their political opponents while ignoring real crimes. The Democratic members tried to push back, but Jordan used his chairman powers to cut them off. 5 minutes for questions, then immediate recognition to the next Republican. It was a masterclass in political theater, and Jordan was loving every second. While Jordan dominated the first part of the hearing, Jasmine Crockett sat quietly, taking notes. Reporters in the press gallery kept glancing at her, wondering when she'd make her move. Some wondered if she was intimidated by the setting, the ornate committee room, the bright television lights, the packed gallery of political insiders. They had no idea she was studying Jordan like a lawyer studies a hostile witness. Every interruption, every raised voice, every dramatic pause, she was cataloging his patterns, finding his weaknesses. When her first opportunity came, Crockett's questions were measured and professional. She asked detailed questions about the witnesses' backgrounds, their funding sources, their previous statements. Nothing flashy, nothing that would give Jordan an opening to attack. The political reporters looked confused. Where was the fireworks? Where was the conflict they'd been promised? Jordan seemed almost disappointed. He'd been gearing up for a fight, but Crockett wasn't giving him one. Yet, as the hearing progressed, something started to shift. Crockett's questions were getting sharper, more pointed. She wasn't raising her voice or getting emotional. She was just systematically dismantling the witness's credibility with surgical precision. "So you're telling us that the Department of Justice is weaponized," she said to one witness. "But you've never actually worked at the Department of Justice, is that correct?" "Well, no, but," "And you're not a lawyer, correct?" "No, but I've studied, and your organization receives funding from groups that have publicly stated their goal is to, quote, destroy the administrative state. Is that accurate?" The witness stammered. Jordan's eyes narrowed. This wasn't going according to plan. By the third hour, Jordan had had enough. When Crockett began questioning another witness about their qualifications, he exploded. "Point of order, Mr. Chairman," he called out. Even though he was the chairman, the gentle lady is badgering the witness. Crockett didn't even look at him. She continued her question calmly, professionally. Jordan's face started turning red. "Mr. Chairman, I demand that the gentle lady be directed to treat our witnesses with respect." Finally, Crockett turned to look at him. Her expression was completely neutral, almost bored. "I'm simply asking about their qualifications, Mr. Chairman. Isn't that what we're supposed to do in a congressional hearing?" The simplicity of her response made Jordan look foolish. He was the one shouting, the one getting emotional, while she remained perfectly professional. Jordan decided to change tactics. Instead of using parliamentary procedure, he went for a direct attack during his next round of questioning. "You know what, Congresswoman Crockett," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Maybe if you spent less time on Twitter and more time actually reading the Constitution, you'd understand what we're trying to accomplish here." The room went silent. Everyone knew this was crossing a line. You don't attack fellow members personally during hearings. But Jordan was betting that Crockett would respond emotionally, giving him the opening he needed to paint her as unfit for Congress. Crockett looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled slightly and said, "Thank you for that feedback, Mr. Chairman. I'll take it under advisement." Jordan blinked. That wasn't the response he expected. He'd insulted her directly, questioned her competence, and she'd just thanked him. Over the next 30 minutes he interrupted Crockett 6 times, claimed she was out of order 4 times, and made increasingly personal attacks on her qualifications and experience. "Maybe they do things differently in Texas," he sneered, during one exchange. "But here in Congress, we actually follow the rules. Perhaps the Congresswoman should stick to areas where she has actual expertise," he said during another. Each attack was designed to provoke an emotional response. Each one failed. Crockett remained calm, professional, and devastatingly effective in her questioning. But everyone in the room could feel the pressure building. Jordan was getting more frustrated, more aggressive, more desperate to get under her skin. His voice was getting louder, his gestures more dramatic. A moment everyone was waiting for came during the fourth hour of the hearing. Jordan had just finished a particularly aggressive round of questioning. When Crockett asked for recognition to question the same witness, her questions were surgical. Within 5 minutes, she'd gotten the witness to admit that his expert testimony was based entirely on news articles and social media posts. The witness looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat as Crockett methodically destroyed his credibility. Jordan watched in growing fury as his carefully selected witness fell apart under basic questioning. This was supposed to be easy. This was supposed to make Democrats look weak and unprepared. Instead, his freshman opponent was making him look like an amateur. When Crockett finished her questioning, Jordan was practically vibrating with rage. His knuckles were white where he gripped his gavel. His jaw was clenched so tight it looked painful. The next exchange would change everything. Jordan's breaking point came without warning. As Crockett began her final round of questioning, asking the witness about his organization's ties to dark money groups, Jordan completely lost control. "Enough," he screamed, his voice cracking as it echoed through the chamber. He slammed his gavel so hard that several people in the gallery jumped. "I will not sit here and watch you destroy the reputation of honest Americans." The room fell dead silent. C-SPAN cameras zoomed in on Jordan's red face, capturing every detail of his meltdown. Democratic members stared in shock. Even Republican members looked uncomfortable. But Jordan wasn't finished. Standing up from his chair, he pointed directly at Crockett, his finger shaking with rage. "You don't know what you're talking about," he shouted. "You're completely out of line. You're a freshman member who thinks she can come in here and disrespect the entire process." His voice was so loud that security officers outside the committee room stepped closer to the doors. Reporters frantically typed on their phones, trying to capture every word of the unprecedented outburst. "You're grandstanding. You're playing politics. You're everything that's wrong with Congress today," Jordan continued, his face now purple with fury. She didn't interrupt, didn't respond, didn't even change her expression. She just waited. The contrast was stunning. On one side, a 60-year-old man having what looked like a complete breakdown on national television. On the other side, a calm, composed Congresswoman who looked like she was watching a mildly interesting movie. When Jordan finally paused to catch his breath, the room was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning hum. Everyone was staring at Crockett, waiting to see how she would respond to this unprecedented attack. She took a small sip of water from the glass in front of her. She straightened her papers neatly. She looked up at Jordan with an expression of mild concern, like a teacher looking at a student who'd just had a tantrum. But in the dead silence of the room, every word carried perfectly. "Mr. Chairman," she said quietly, "are you okay? Do you need a minute to collect yourself?" The words hit like a thunderbolt. In 6 simple words, she had completely reversed the power dynamic in the room. Jordan, who had been trying to intimidate her, suddenly looked like an out-of-control child being gently corrected by the adult in the room. But she wasn't finished. "Because if you're done with your outburst," she continued, her voice still perfectly calm, "I'd like to continue asking questions that might actually help the American people understand what's happening here." He'd thrown everything he had at her. Screaming, personal attacks, abuse of his chairman powers, and she'd responded like she was asking him to pass the salt. Crockett waited a beat, then continued speaking in the same calm, measured tone. "You see, Chairman, I've been in courtrooms where actual lives were on the line. I've faced down prosecutors, trying to send innocent people to prison. I've stared down judges who thought I didn't belong in their courtroom." Her voice never rose above conversational level, but somehow it commanded the attention of everyone in the room. "So when you raise your voice at me, when you try to intimidate me, when you abuse your position to silence me," she paused, looking directly into his. "I just wonder if this is really the best you've got." The effect was immediate and electric. Someone in the gallery actually gasped. A Democratic member put his hand over his mouth to hide a smile. Even some of the Republican members looked like they were struggling not to react. Jordan's face went from purple to white. He'd been completely, utterly, devastatingly destroyed, and it had happened so smoothly, so professionally, that he didn't even realize it was happening until it was over. Crockett simply raised her eyebrows slightly, as if waiting for him to form a complete sentence. "Now, sir," she said, in the same calm tone, "you were saying that you based your testimony on what you read on social media. Can you tell us which specific social media accounts you consider credible sources for constitutional law?" The casual way she dismissed Jordan and returned to her work was the final blow. She hadn't just beaten him in their confrontation, she'd made him irrelevant to it. Jordan slowly sank back into his chair, still staring at her in disbelief. The most feared interrogator in Congress had just been taken apart by a freshman member who never even raised her voice. Within seconds, phones throughout the press gallery were buzzing with notifications. The C-SPAN clip was already being uploaded to social media. Political reporters were frantically typing tweets, trying to capture what they'd just witnessed. Politics Live. Holy shit. Jasmine Crockett just absolutely destroyed Jim Jordan without even raising her voice. This is incredible. Congress Watch. I've covered Congress for 20 years and I've never seen anything like this. Jordan is speechless. Breaking politics. The way she said, "Are you okay?" might be the most savage political moment of the decade. The video was spreading faster than anyone could track. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Every platform was exploding with shares, reactions, and commentary. Trying to salvage some dignity, Jordan attempted to regain control of the hearing, but his voice was shaky, his confidence shattered. "We'll take a 15-minute recess," he announced, his voice barely audible after his earlier screaming. As members filed out of the committee room, Crockett remained seated, calmly reviewing her notes. She looked completely unbothered, as if she'd just finished a routine discussion rather than delivering one of the most devastating political beatdowns in congressional history. Jordan, meanwhile, hurried out of the room surrounded by his staff, who were already trying to figure out how to spin what had just happened. But there was no spinning this. The video spoke for itself, and the internet was about to make sure everyone saw it. Within 30 minutes of the hearing, Jasmine destroys Jordan was trending #1 on Twitter. The video of her calm response to his screaming had been viewed over 100,000 times and was accelerating fast. But it wasn't just the raw numbers, it was the quality of the reaction. Political commentators who normally disagreed on everything were united in their amazement at what they'd witnessed. Van Jones, 68. I've seen a lot of political moments in my time. This is one for the history books. Jasmine Crockett just showed the entire country how to handle a bully. Bill Kristol. Not often I agree with progressive Democrats, but Jordan's behavior was disgraceful, and Crockett's response was masterful. This is how public servants should conduct themselves. IOC. This is what happens when you send a real lawyer to do Congress's job. Jasmine Crockett just gave a masterclass in staying cool under pressure. The internet's meme creators went into overdrive. The image of Jordan screaming while Crockett sat calmly became an instant template. One popular meme showed Jordan's red face, with the caption, "When you're used to intimidating people but meet someone who actually knows what they're doing." Another showed Crockett's calm expression with the text, "Are you okay? Do you need a minute?" over various images of people having meltdowns. TikTok users created thousands of videos using her audio, over clips of everything from toddler tantrums to reality TV drama. The phrase, "Are you okay? Do you need a minute?" became an instant cultural phenomenon. Political analysts couldn't stop talking about the exchange. Cable news shows played the clip on loop, bringing in experts to analyze every aspect of what had happened. On CNN, legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin broke down Crockett's technique. What she did there is classic courtroom strategy. When an opponent is losing control, you stay calm and let them destroy themselves. But the way she turned it around with genuine-sounding concern, that's next level. Fox News found themselves in an awkward position. Their hosts wanted to defend Jordan, but the video was so clearly damaging that even they couldn't spin it effectively. "Look, Jim Jordan is a fighter," said one host. "Sometimes fighters get passionate, but maybe this particular approach wasn't the most effective." MSNBC was less restrained. "What we witnessed today," said one commentator, "was the difference between someone who actually knows how to do this job and someone who just likes to make noise." Jasmine Crockett showed the maturity and professionalism that we should expect from our elected officials. By the end of the first day, the video had been viewed over 5 million times across all platforms. News outlets that normally ignored committee hearings were making it their lead story. The clip was being shared in languages Crockett didn't even know existed. International news outlets picked up the story, with headlines like "American politician's calm response to colleague's outburst goes viral worldwide." But the most telling statistic was the engagement. People weren't just watching the video, they were sharing it, commenting on it, and creating their own content inspired by it. This wasn't just a viral moment, it was a cultural phenomenon. Jim Jordan's team tried everything to control the narrative. They released a statement claiming that Jordan was passionately defending the American people, and that his emotions showed how much he cares about justice. The statement was immediately mocked online, defending the American people by screaming at a congresswoman asking questions. One Twitter user replied, "That's some next-level defending right there." Jordan himself tried to do interviews to explain his behavior, but every appearance just made things worse. When asked about Crockett's response, he called it disrespectful and inappropriate. The pushback was swift and brutal. "She asked if you were okay," one interviewer pointed out. "How is that disrespectful?" Jordan's usual allies in conservative media were notably quiet. Even they seemed to recognize that this was not a hill worth dying on. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett was handling her sudden fame with the same calm professionalism she'd shown in the hearing. Her first statement was characteristically measured. "I came to Congress to do a job, not to get into shouting match. When someone tries to intimidate me or my colleagues, I'll respond appropriately. But I'd rather focus on the work the American people sent me here to do." Democratic fundraising groups immediately reached out, offering to help her capitalize on her viral moment. Progressive organizations started talking about her as a rising star. Cable news shows competed to book her for interviews. But Crockett was strategic about her response. She did a few carefully selected interviews, staying on message about the importance of congressional oversight and professional conduct. She didn't gloat, didn't attack Jordan personally, and consistently redirected conversations back to policy issues. Political strategists recognized immediately that something significant had changed. For years, Jim Jordan had been one of the most effective Republican attack dogs, capable of dominating news cycles and putting Democrats on the defense. Now he'd been neutralized by a freshman congresswoman who made it look easy. "This changes the entire dynamic," explained one Democratic strategist. "Jordan's whole brand is built on intimidation and aggression. When that doesn't work, when someone can just calmly deflect it, his power disappears." Republican strategists were more worried. Jordan was supposed to be their weapon against Democratic overreach. If he could be handled this easily by a junior member, what did that say about their other tactics? Beyond politics, the exchange resonated with millions of people who'd faced workplace bullies, aggressive bosses, or intimidating authority figures. Crockett's response became a template for how to handle such situations. Self-help experts started citing the exchange in articles about dealing with difficult people. Business schools began using the video in courses about negotiation and conflict resolution. "What she did," explained one workplace consultant, "was textbook de-escalation. She didn't match his energy, didn't get defensive, and turned his aggression into a question about his well-being." It's brilliant. British newspapers covered it as an example of American political theater. European political commentators used it to analyze different cultural approaches to conflict. The BBC ran a segment on the art of political calm, featuring the Crockett-Jordan exchange alongside similar moments in parliamentary systems worldwide. Even authoritarian governments took notice. State-controlled media in several countries tried to use the clip to show American democracy as chaotic and unstable, only to have their own citizens point out how professionally Crockett had handled the situation. Jim Jordan's approval ratings had dropped significantly, particularly among suburban voters who saw his behavior as unprofessional. Sir Crockett, meanwhile, had become one of the most requested speakers at Democratic events. Her fundraising numbers had quadrupled, and she was being mentioned as a potential statewide candidate in Texas. More importantly, the dynamic in congressional hearings had changed. Republican members were noticeably more careful about their tone and approach, knowing that aggressive tactics could backfire spectacularly. They called it "How to Stay Cool Under Fire," and it covered everything from voice control to body language. The session became so popular that senior Democratic members started attending as well, recognizing that even experienced politicians could learn from Crockett's masterclass in composure. The training materials included video analysis of the Jordan confrontation, breaking down every moment frame by frame to show exactly how Crockett maintained her advantage throughout the exchange. Professional communication experts were brought in to explain the psychological principles behind her success, and former prosecutors shared insights about courtroom techniques that translate perfectly to congressional hearings. The curriculum expanded to include media training specialists, who taught members how their responses would look in short social media clips. understanding that most voters would see their performance through 15-second viral videos rather than full C-SPAN coverage. The key lessons were simple but effective, and became essential knowledge for any politician facing aggressive opponents. The first rule was to never match an aggressor's energy level, because responding to shouting with more shouting only makes both parties look unprofessional and gives the aggressor exactly what they want. Trainers emphasized that the camera captures everything, and viewers at home will always side with the person who appears more reasonable and controlled. Research data was presented showing that in political confrontations, the person who maintains composure sees their approval ratings increase, while the aggressor typically suffers lasting damage to their reputation. The second principle involved using calm questions to highlight unreasonable behavior, which Crockett demonstrated perfectly when she asked Jordan if he needed a minute to collect himself, instantly making his rage look childish and inappropriate. This technique works because it frames the aggressor's behavior as concerning rather than intimidating, completely flipping the power dynamic in the room. Participants practiced role-playing scenarios where they had to maintain composure while facing increasingly hostile questioning, learning to use tone and pacing as weapons of persuasion. Advanced sessions included training with actual hostile questioners, including retired Republican operatives who were paid to create the most challenging possible scenario. The third lesson emphasized staying focused on facts and procedure rather than getting drawn into personal attacks, which keeps you looking competent and professional while your opponent loses all credibility. Instructors taught members to have prepared facts and statistics ready, so they could pivot back to substance whenever someone tried to make things personal. Members learned to create mental fact banks, organized by topic, allowing them to instantly access relevant information under pressure without appearing to read from notes. Finally, the most important rule was to let the other person's lack of control speak for itself, because nothing destroys a politician's reputation faster than a public meltdown captured on live television for millions to witness and share. The training emphasized patience above all else, teaching members that sometimes the best response is no response at all, just letting the cameras capture the contrast between professional composure and unprofessional outbursts. Graduates of the program reported feeling significantly more confident in high-pressure situations, and several credited the training with helping them handle their own viral moments successfully. Political historians were already calling the exchange a watershed moment, the point when the old rules of political intimidation stopped working. What Jasmine Crockett did, wrote one analyst, was show that bullying only works if people are afraid. When someone responds with professionalism and calm confidence, the bully's power disappears. The phrase, "Are you okay? Do you need a minute?" entered the political lexicon permanently. It became shorthand for someone staying calm under pressure and turning an attack into a moment of strength. As the story continued to spread and evolve, one thing became clear. This wasn't just about one viral moment or one heated exchange. It was about a fundamental shift in how political power works in the social media age. The old model where the loudest, most aggressive voice dominated was being replaced by something new. In this new reality, composure and competence mattered more than volume and theatrics. Jasmine Crockett had accidentally become the face of this change, and judging by the continued popularity of her response, Americans were ready for politicians who could handle pressure without losing their mind. It showed that in an era of constant cameras and instant sharing, how you respond to pressure matters as much as what you say. For Jordan, it was a career-defining moment in the worst possible way. His brand of aggressive intimidation had finally met its match, and the entire world had watched it happen. For Crockett, it was the launch of a national political career. She'd proven that you don't have to shout to be heard, you don't have to be aggressive to be effective, and you don't have to lose your cool to win a fight. But perhaps most importantly, the exchange gave millions of Americans a new model for how to handle bullies, whether in Congress or in their own lives. Sometimes the most powerful response to someone screaming at you isn't to scream back, it's to calmly ask if they're okay. And sometimes that quiet question can be louder than any shout. Thanks for watching this incredible political moment unfold. If you enjoyed this breakdown of how Jasmine Crockett's calm response destroyed Jim Jordan's aggressive tactics, smash that like button and subscribe for more explosive political analysis. What did you think of her response? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to share this with anyone who needs to see how to handle a workplace bully like a pro.